March 1902, and he left a fortune of about £3 million, which is roughly under $300 million today, to fund the scholarship of select countries around the world, mostly Commonwealth countries, to bring students from those countries to come and study at Oxford University, which is the university that he studied at. So the Rhodes Scholarships have been in existence since we started in 1903 and have been in existence for 122 years. And it's considered as one of the most prestigious international scholarships in the world. And one of the reasons for that is not because our founder was controversial. He was a colonizer, but he decided to leave his money for to educate people, and we've used that foundation to actually go on and do good work. But also, what makes Rhodes unique is that it is not just an academic scholarship, but there are other qualities as well that we expect of Rhodes Scholars, and I'll go into that in a lot more detail in the Rhodes selection criteria. So, famous Rhodes Scholars and why the Rhodes Scholarship has been so prestigious. A lot of Rhodes Scholars have gone on to embark on very successful careers. So, in politics and government, perhaps our most famous Rhodes Scholar is President Bill Clinton, who is the President of the United States. And we've also in Australia had three prime ministers who are Rhodes Scholars. We've had prime ministers in Pakistan and Jamaica who are Rhodes Scholars. And currently today, we've got ministers, senators, governors, mayors across the world who are part of this amazing community of 6,000 people. We've also had people successful in the world of business, and the photo you see there is of John McCall McBain, a Canadian Rhodes Scholar, who's generously donated over $100 million to the scholarship. And we've got other people in the world of business who've been very successful. We have people in the world of media, Nobel Prize winners, inventors, and also people in the education space. So James Fulbright was a Rhodes Scholar as well, and then he went on to establish the Fulbright Scholarship. So, what is the Global Rhodes Scholarship? Now, I noticed that there are people from all kinds of countries like India, Nigeria, the United States. That's fine. I'll explain how the Rhodes internal workings, how the road works internally. But if you remember in the introduction, I said Cecil Rhodes left his money to a select number of countries. And so over the years, the scholarship has expanded. And one of the expansions that happened was with the introduction of the Global Rhodes Scholarship in 2018. The trust announced that we would make it possible for students from all over the world to now apply to the Rhodes Scholarship. And in the years since, we've awarded two scholarships every year. Now I know that sounds very daunting if you're sitting there from Indonesia, from Romania, and thinking I'm competing with the rest of the world. But the reality is Global Rhodes Scholarship is still very new, so it's not as competitive well, in terms of numbers as some of the more established scholarships. So I don't want you to think that you won't have a chance to get in. I would say still apply because it's still relatively unknown. And some of the countries that we've had Rhodes Scholars come from include Afghanistan, Argentina, Cameroon, Ecuador, Ethiopia, Haiti, Indonesia, Russia, Spain, Sri Lanka, South Korea, Sudan, Thailand, and Turkey. And we're definitely hoping to see new countries emerge as part of the Rhodes community. So I mentioned earlier Rhodes constituencies. So when Cecil died, he picked a few countries in the Commonwealth to leave his money to. So the countries included places like Australia, Bermuda, Canada, some of the Caribbean, Germany, I think India, Kenya, US for sure, New Zealand, Zambia, Zimbabwe. So there's some countries on here that were as part of the original will, which is why we don't have roads available in all countries around the world. We get this question all the time. It is our benefactor who dictated the countries that we're eligible to apply. Over the years, we've expanded the scholarship to places like China, to places like Israel, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, as some of the and West Africa, as some of the new scholarships that have come through. And then with global is treated as a catchment. So if your country is not on the screen, then you probably are a global applicant, unless you're part of the Commonwealth Caribbean or select countries in East Africa and West Africa. And I'll show you the link later for where you can check which country you fall under. So it's very important that you apply to the country for which you are a national of. So you can't cherry pick and decide to apply to global if you have an American or Nigerian passport or an Indian passport. You have to go through your specific constituency. So, what exactly does the Rhodes Scholarship offer? So, Rhodes Scholarship is a fully funded, full-time postgraduate award. So, I stress this because we often get queries for undergraduate. We do not fund bachelor's degrees. We often sometimes get requests for part-time study. We do not fund part-time study. As part of building this amazing community, we currently have 6,000 people. It is very important that you come to Oxford for a minimum of 2 years so that you can be fully immersed in the Oxford experience and the Rhodes experience. So I cannot stress that enough as you are thinking about applying for the scholarship. It has to be full time, it has to be postgraduate. So people come for 2 or more years. So sometimes they're studying for a master's program, sometimes they're studying for a doctorate program. Some STEM courses allow candidates to apply directly to the DPhil program, but for a lot of the non-STEM courses, you have to do a master's first and then apply for a master's program. Rhodes is currently fully funding 3 years. And then the fourth year, they're covering the tuition, but not the stipend, and is still fundraising for that. So people then get very creative about how to fund their fourth year, which is doable. So I just want to remind everyone that Rhodes is a merit scholarship. So it is not a needs-based scholarship. It is competitive, but it is an amazing experience. And it's probably one of the more challenging applications you will do, but it will literally set you up for any other scholarship that you apply to because it is quite rigorous. And what does it cover? So the scholarship covers all your university fees and college fees, and it provides you with an annual stipend. That stipend is currently 19,800, which works out to 1,650 pounds a month. And you get that for the duration of your time here at Oxford. Oxford also applies for the application fee to study to Oxford, so you do not pay a fee to apply to Rhodes, and you do not pay any fees to apply to the University of Oxford. And let me just clarify here that you apply to the Rhodes Scholarship first, and then Rhodes helps you with your University of Oxford application, which is why this year's application window is for admission to Oxford for next year. So we have time to apply for to your university course. So we cover the cost of the visa. And we also pay for your flights to and from Oxford, as well as the settling in allowance. So this is probably one of the most important slides after the constituency one that I need you to pay a little bit of attention to. So when Cecil Rhodes wrote his will in 1899, I mean, the man was very, very visionary because we've still used the criteria that he set. He said he did not want Rhodes Scholars to just be bookworms. So while we expect you to be at the top of your class and have academic achievement and excellence, that is not the only thing we're looking for. In fact, this only accounts for 30% of your score, and this is in the will. So the other 70% is split between three other criteria. We are looking for future leaders. So there's an expectation that you have done some sort of service. You have done something to help your community. And just to clarify, this does not mean that you've run an NGO because we got this question last week. It just means that you've volunteered, you've got a cause that you're passionate about. It could be supporting, like when I applied to be a Rhodes Scholar, I used to volunteer at an orphanage, and it wasn't a one-time thing. I consistently volunteered and did the kind of things that you would do with Habitat for Humanity. So I had a cause that I was very passionate about, which is disadvantaged children. You could be a doctor and you're helping people in rural areas that don't have access to healthcare. You could be someone who's reading to children in the hospital. So we don't prescribe what that looks like. We want to see evidence that you care about people who are less fortunate in society. And this criteria is actually the same weighting as academic excellence. Again, this is in the will. It is 30% of your score. The other two criteria are 20% each. And the first one is what we call mastery. So Cecil did not want bookworms, and he did believe that you can demonstrate you can demonstrate excellence in other ways. So what are your hobbies? What do you like to do outside of education? So it could be anything from sports, it could be music, it could be debate, it could be theater, it could be artist, it could be a tap dancer. But what are you doing outside of your time that you are passionate about, that you pursue to a high degree of excellence as well? So that is 20% of the score. And then the last one is the courage and skills to lead. So we want to see evidence of you leading. Now, leading isn't just about titles. You could be the choir leader, you could be a prefect in your class. We want to see evidence that you've actually led. Now, I will say something that might come back to bite me, but I just want to assure people who come from cultures where we are aware that things like mastery is not a thing. I understand that as people, I'm from Zambia, which was colonized by the Brits, and we have a very British way of doing things where I was ticking the boxes without knowing I was ticking the boxes. So if you're sitting there and thinking, I have academic excellence check, I have energy. I have hobbies that I'm doing. I can show that. I've demonstrated evidence of leading. I've led in my class. I've led in my, outside. Like I always use church as an example because being a choir leader is actually a sign of leadership. But my service is a little weak. I would still say please apply because we are aware that there is a cultural nuance to Rhodes that is very British and very Anglo. And so I would give some leeway to people who are taking 3 out of 4, but your fourth should not be 0. If it's a little weak or there's a little bit of evidence, we will consider it. But this is very much because globally, not everyone actually does these things, whereas in Commonwealth countries, it is the norm. So that is something that we will look at quite carefully. So I don't want to discourage anyone who's looking at this and thinking, I have 3 out of 4. I would say still apply and make a case for why your fourth is weak, and we will consider it. Okay, so please only apply for the Global Scholarship if you are not eligible to apply for a Rhodes Scholarship in any other constituency. So if you hold an American or an Indian or South African passport, you cannot come through Global. If you hold a passport of a country and you don't meet those requirements, we have a category called interjurisdictional. So I'll give you an example. I used to live in Dubai. There are a lot of people from India who live in Dubai. You cannot have an Emirati passport, so they still have Indian passports. Then they go to university in the US and they cannot meet the India requirement, which asks for you to have spent 5 years, 5 out of the last 10 years in India. In those cases, we have a category called interjurisdictional, and the Rhodes Trust will decide which is the best constituency to take those candidates. So citizenship is linked to your constituency. So please be careful when you start the application, make sure that you're applying to the right constituency. The other thing is age. So Global has 3 age criteria. So the basic one is 18 to 24 years. If you are a medical student, we give you an extra year of 25. And then if you finish your degree late, you have up to under 27. Like you can't be 27 by the 1st of October, provided you finished your degree within the last year. So I'll show you the link where you can see the detail behind this, but it's very important that you read the age criteria. It's also important to read the GPA criteria. So I think in time we will look at this in more detail because I was in Brazil last year and I was told that 3.7 is a very high GPA, but that is the road standard now. And as global continues to evolve, we will find a way to recalibrate GPAs that are equivalent of, say, Brazilian. I was told a 3.7 is like a 3.3 because there's grade deflation, whereas places like Harvard, everyone gets a 4.0. So it's very easy to cross this bar. We will sort that out in time, but for now, 3.7 is the hard GPA threshold that you need to cross, and I do not make any exceptions. Okay, so what do you need to apply? Your birth certificate is really important because we need to verify when you were born. However, for those people who don't have a birth certificate or it got lost, but you've got a passport, then we'll take that. Have a passport to apply for global because the final interview is actually held in person in Oxford. So these 2 documents are really important. We would like to see your transcripts, your high school transcripts, and your undergraduate transcripts. So I've already had a query from somebody who said to me, I no longer have my high school graduate transcripts. And I said, you will need them, if not for Rhodes, for jobs, for other things. And if you apply to university using those, then you really should have them. So we ask for those transcripts. We also ask for, less so in global, but if you are an interjurisdictional candidate, like the Indians who live in UAE, we kind of need to see this because if you're then sent to us, then we need to understand why you don't meet India's criteria. And then a personal statement is mandatory from Rhodes. This is you telling us about yourself. It helps us understand who you are, what your hopes and dreams are, and the questions that structure that. Please do not use ChatGPT to start your personal statement. I cannot tell you how easy it is when you've been doing this for like 6 years to spot a formulaic personal statement. And as someone who uses ChatGPT all the time and has to rewrite everything it gives me, I can spot a personal statement that's ChatGPT. You can use ChatGPT to finesse your personal statement because we are mindful that they're non-English native speakers and so non-English speakers. So sometimes you'll need some refinement or maybe to get you to your word count. That's okay, but don't start with ChatGPT, write a road personal statement because I guarantee you will figure it out. Academic statement is super important. We just had a session with University Dons this week who told us that Oxford is becoming increasingly difficult to get into. And therefore, as Rhodes, even though academics is 30%, we will be scrutinizing that as if it's like 50% of the score because you have to get into Oxford. And right now, Oxford has fewer places that because they've had a higher number of applicants. I don't know if this number is public actually, so I won't say what it is, but a high number of applications compared to the number of places. And so it's become really competitive to get into Oxford. And then also with all the geopolitical tension in the US, we are expecting a spike in the number of applications to Oxford. So the academic statement, which tells us what you want to study, why you want to study, is also going to be very important. We ask for four reference letters, three academics, people who have taught you, because they need to tell us what percentage of, in your class you were, why you were a good student, etc. And then one, which is a character reference, which doesn't necessarily have to be academic. It could be someone who knows you except family. So someone you've worked with, volunteered with, someone you do a hobby with, who can speak to your character. But it doesn't have to be, it should not be family, and it does not have to be an academic person. And then, of course, your photo so that we know it's you when you show up. English language, I have to stress this because again, a lot of our constituency covers non-English countries. So the university is very strict about their TOEFL scores. And as Rhodes, we need to see this by the time the application closes on the 31st of July. And then we ask you for your CV. And the reason we ask for your CV is this is again a very Anglo thing, and I think also specific. This is where you see the divide between Western culture and non-Western culture. If you look at a Rhodes application by an American student, they will tell you everything they've done and achieved. If you look at a Rhodes application for somewhere where I'm from, like Zambia, people don't actually talk themselves up. And actually, Maria, you and I were just talking about this. Do you want to give the example of the person that you said that example you gave me about that brilliant candidate?
Yeah, we have this brilliant candidate who was in the National Olympic. Um, I think she was an ice skater here for Spain. She had an injury and she went on to train. So she wakes up every day at 5 o'clock. And at 6 a.m., she's training the national team for ice skating. And she would not disclose this during the interview anywhere. She would not disclose it because she thought that that was putting jeopardizing her excellence. She was waking up so early and doing something different. So this is an example of how much sometimes in this global constituency we find individuals who don't give enough, I would say, importance to the little things, to the big. I mean, this is a huge one, but to the things that they're doing beyond academics. And if you're doing anything that you are proud of, in any way, then we need to hear it and we need to be made aware of it. And it's not going to jeopardize any belief that we have on your excellence and your master, I would say your academic integrity. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so we now have the CV template, which forces you to tell us everything, including, what your hobbies are, what presentations you've done, if you've published anything, because then sometimes we're sifting through your application to find the Rhodes criteria. Especially in our constituency, where people are not very familiar with the Rhodes Scholarship, whereas the constituencies that have been doing this for 122 years know to talk up the fact that they represented their country. They know to talk up that they were a debate champion, or that they've swum across the channel, like my fellow Rhodes Scholar, who's not on this call, but he was last week. So we know how to talk that up. So you need to talk yourself up. This is not the place to be humble, is what I would say. But don't be arrogant either. So just strike a fine balance between the two. Okay, so moving on so that we can wrap up. Okay, so very important as well, the global selection process and timelines. So today is the 21st of June, and we're currently 2.5 weeks into the application window. So the application window runs from the 2nd of June to the 31st of July. We have a hard stop on the 31st of July. And then from the 5th of August to 25th of August, we do a paper-based screening. We have over 30 volunteers who eyeball each application to determine whether you meet the criteria. And then we have a short list of candidates who then go to the second round and have a 30 to 45 minute virtual interview. I know we still say telephone interview, but it's actually a Zoom interview with two selectors, and that's over a 1 week period. And then by the 10th to the 12th of September, we announce the finalists. And we have to announce the finalists about 7 weeks in advance of the interview so that we can help candidates with visas. And so the great thing about being a global finalist is it's the only constituency that flies candidates to Oxford for their final interview. So I'm very lenient. If people come and they say, I want an extra week to see the UK, I'm like, cool, that's fine. So they'll come in, we pay for 3 days accommodation in Oxford, and they get to meet their fellow finalists. So we have 8 to 10 finalists every year. We have the interview. We have a meet on the 30th of October where everyone gets together with the selection committee, which we do not disclose who the final committee is. I will say that I am on the final committee, but the other people are not disclosed publicly. And we meet with all the finalists. They get to hang out with each other. And then on the 31st, we have interviews. Then we have a cocktail reception where we announce the two winners. And then they go off, either fly home or stay in the UK and go on holiday. We also try to get them to meet other Rhodes Scholars. So it's a really fun time. So at the minimum, you get a trip to Oxford. And if you're really smart, as one of them was, she actually went to the department where she wanted to study, met professors, didn't get Rhodes, but still came to Oxford. She was remarkable because there's some scholarships that are not announced. So you have to build a network at Oxford to know how to navigate. And she did that from Mexico, and she came to Oxford on her own. So she's one of the people I'm most proud of, and I've kept in touch with her. And she was just a finalist. Okay, so the final slide is stay in touch. So Rhodes is on Facebook, Instagram, X, or Twitter, I still call it, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So social media is very active. But this is probably the most important link you should know. It is the Rhodes website, and I'll go to that briefly now. Let me see if I set this up properly. Okay, I did. Okay, so that link brings you to this website where it shows you each constituency and the number of spots they have in each country. So for those of you who are from the Caribbean, you can check if your country is here. So this year, one of our new Rhodes Scholars for Global is from Haiti. Haiti is not Commonwealth. So Haiti, Cuba fall under global. And then in East Africa, I saw someone from Ethiopia. We actually have an Ethiopian Rhodes Scholar. He was one of the first two global scholars. Ethiopia is actually global. It is not in East Africa. And you can see the countries that are listed here. So if your country is not on this page, it means you fall under global. And when you click on global, you come to this page, which tells you when the application's closing. So the time is midnight GMT, but also just to remind everybody that the deadline might be the 31st of July, but you have to pass something called an eligibility checker, and we have a 2 day turnaround. So if you don't start your application by the 21st of July, you won't get it in. And on this page, you have really important information. Information for candidates is what every single candidate needs to download and read this. We also have guidance for your referees. We also have guidance for nominating institutions. So Global is one of the unique scholarships where you need to be endorsed by your university. So if you're not sure who that is, in American universities, it's usually like a president or provost. In I know African universities, it's like a dean of students or the vice chancellor's office sometimes. And then in other places, it's very decentralized. Like in Brazil, I think it was going to have to be the heads of department, but it cannot be a professor. It has to be someone with authority within the university. And then in terms of the courses, so actually, let me click on this. So information for candidates, you absolutely need to read this document because it covers everything. And some of the questions I know some of you are going to ask, the age, it actually tells you the specific dates that you need to be born. So 1st of October 2000 to 2nd of October 2007 for the lower category. It gives you the dates as well for the upper category, which is for medical students. And then the oldest students, you have to be born after the 1st of October 1998 and should have completed your program in the last 12 months. It also gives you links to the University of Oxford website because we also get this question, what course can I do? I'll show you that in a second. And also English language proficiency. So the University of Oxford website is amazing. So if you want to do economics, you just type in here Department of Economics. It tells you which courses you want to do. You come onto this. So for example, we have people who say, I want to do a DPhil in economics. It tells you exactly what your entry requirements are for each of your courses. You have to have a first class degree or a strong upper second class. It even tells you the English language requirement here. So the websites are really good about telling you what exactly is required. And then the general English language requirements website is here. But I would say that look at the course that you want to do first and then click on go through it and it gives you all the details, relevant details. So that was all I was going to cover. Um, so we'll go. Oh, first I will invite